Welcome to Bets on the Future, where we highlight the various career paths in the electrifying metals world. From the vehicle you ride in to the bridge holding it up, metals are everywhere. Why not in your career too? I'm Jennifer Betts, a metals industry veteran with almost 20 years experience, here to highlight these incredible career paths as told by the women who are living them. Welcome to another incredible episode of Bets on the Future. We have a guest this week that I am pretty excited to talk to. Somebody that we connected over LinkedIn, and we have a few mutuals in common. One in particular, because the mutual was a previous guest on this podcast. We have Rijuta Dey. She is a senior reporter from Fastmarkets. Rijuta is a seasoned business journalist and writer who has lived and worked in London and New York. Hailing from a small town in India, Rijuta chased her dreams of becoming a journalist across 3 countries and continents. While looking for a job in New York City, she came across the role of a price reporter at Fastmarkets and applied without knowing that it was going to lead her into the niche but wonderful world of metals. Rijuta started her career in metals reporting on base metals and was promoted to the role of a senior reporter over 3 years ago. Since then, she has been covering all aspects of the American steel industry. Rijuta, I want to say thank you for hopping on. A little spoiler alert for those that are listening now, there's some pretty major steel news that's happening this week. So very much thank you for taking a few minutes out of your busy day to hop on here and just talk a little bit about your career and how you got into this incredible world of metals.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for having me in your podcast. I have been looking forward to speaking to you and talking about my unconventional career, which has led me to be a steel expert, sort of, in a country very, very far from where I was born and brought up. Thank you for having me. And for those who don't know, we met at a conference run by my company, Fastmarkets, in Houston at the beginning of this year. Cannot believe it's September already. Go ahead. What do you want to know about me?
Well, I'm very intrigued. So you started in India, made your way to New York, and then found yourself reporting on metals. Was there, I mean, what kind of sparked your interest in it? I mean, from an education standpoint, where was that intrigue from? I'm just, what kind of popped it up? Were you looking for a particular role in journalism, and this just kind of seemed, never heard of this area of the industry before?
Well, okay, for those, those people who I tell them I'm from this town in India. I'm from a town called Jamshedpur. Okay, it's known as the steel city of India. It's a complete coincidence that I was born there and brought up there. It's got nothing to do with the fact that I'm a steel reporter now. No, it's where Tata Steel has their factory. Their big plant, and my family was not involved in that business, but my best friend's father was an engineer. In Tata Steel. She now works for Tata Steel. But no, I was, I have a great love for reading. And when I was growing up, my father would read newspapers in 3 different languages every day in the morning. That was our morning schedule. We would get up and have read news during breakfast and talk about news to each other. And I don't know if I wanted to become a journalist when I was young, but I was always good at writing. And I did a literature course from Delhi University. And after that, once you do a course in literature, there are only so many career paths you can take. So I was very intrigued by journalism. And I applied for a master's degree in journalism in London, City University. And they were like, well, you can write well, but you've never reported. Do you know what's the difference? And I was like, actually, I don't. They're like, no, go get some experience. And I began interning for Times of India, which is the biggest newspaper in India. And I just fell in love with reporting. I fell in love with reporting, with being a journalist, writing, attending events. And when I finished my master's in London, my professor told me that, journalism is going through major changes, and if you want to become relevant in journalism and continue working as a journalist, you have to focus on business journalism. So that was my into the world of, like, commodities reporting and reporting on business aspects of journalism. So I've never actually worked for a traditional media. I've always been a business reporter, and I've worked in some really niche industries. Like, my first job was in seafood and fishing, and that was very interesting. Um, when I came to the US for many years, I was not a journalist. I was living in the West Coast. I was living in San Diego, and there are no journalism jobs there. And I was working as a marketing copy editor kind of thing, and I was just so miserable because I really missed being a journalist. And when I got the opportunity to move to the East Coast, and I came to the East Coast, and I began living in the New York, tri-state area. I knew I was going to find a job. This is the place if you want to be a journalist and, like, write about, like, business. This is the place to be. And Fastmarkets was just one of the jobs I applied to. In fact, over LinkedIn. You know, that was the job I found on LinkedIn, and I had no idea what price reporting was. And I applied for the job. I got the job, and since then, I've been at Fastmarkets, writing about base metals first, and now steel. And I just really love it. The more I report on it, the deeper my knowledge goes, the more I know about the people behind the companies, the more fascinated I am. So yeah, that's my answer. There's, like, absolute, like, nothing intentional I did to land up in metals, but this is where my career just, came to.
I find it so interesting that you were born and raised in the place where Tata Steel is headquartered, main plant is, like, that.
Yeah.
Just kind of a crazy full circle. It's not like India is a small country, right? Like,
No.
all the places that you could have been from in India,
Yeah.
like, that's the location.
Yeah.
And this is what you're doing today. It's pretty incredible. And again, there's a few metals out there as well. And steel is the one that you're reporting on, and
Yeah.
where you're from and who your best friend works for is
Yeah.
pretty incredible. All those ties tying together. From a outsider's perspective, who have never been in the metals industry, or really maybe haven't been in the commodities industry, can you explain to them a little bit about what price reporting is, and or what Fastmarkets is, and how it fits into the commodities slash metals industry?
Okay, so Fastmarkets is a global price reporting agency, and we have different industries that we cover. Metals is one of them. There's forestry, there's agriculture, and price reporting, is a very specific kind of reporting where we talk to industry participants and ask them very sensitive information about what their trading prices, and that necessitates that, that they remain anonymous, because the kind of information they give us. And then, we canvass the market, and we publish prices. uh, that's just the short version of it. Why do PRAs exist? Because these industries are very opaque. It's very, despite the size of the country, the industry is general. I find it fascinating that everybody knows everybody here. Everybody knows everybody here, but still, if there was all that transparency that companies claim to have, PRs need to exist, I guess. But clearly there is, there's a space for us, therefore we exist. Um, there are benchmarks that some commodities are priced on, like, that PRAs, publish those numbers. So it's, quite a technical kind of work, I would say. And we are also absolutely, as any journalist should be, we're absolutely objective. We do care about where the industry is going, but we are not influenced by the price cycles. We report on it. So we are, I think, more so than, like, reporters in the general media. I think we are quite invested in our industry. Like, we cover everything, like, from trade policies to international incidents. I'll give you an example. When Ukraine was invaded, the prices of so many products that we price, they just like went haywire because of the kind of, like, cascading effects any major geopolitical incident has on the world markets. Um, Fastmarkets is also a global PRA, so we have offices all over the world. And I just happen to live in the US and you know cover the US industry, and I travel all over the country and attend events, talk to people all over the country, and that's where my job is. That's where the role of my company is within, like, this bigger umbrella.
It's fascinating to see this type of combination between somebody that's really well spoken and literate and loves the reading aspect of things. You so often think that that's one-sided, like that's their specialty. But in this particular role, you also still have to be analytical and good with numbers and have that numerical sense. And so
Yes.
often people think it's one or the other in careers. And this is one of those jobs that you get to combine both of them and you get to play really between both of them, where you're writing stories, you're getting to meet people, so you get a lot of those interpersonal skills. You do get to travel, you do get to see some really cool things. I'm sure you've been on some cool plant tours in your day, getting to see some cool supplier consumer visits, things like that. So it's kind of that cool all around job where it's not just only writing, only being, more that scientist analytical aspect. It's one of those few jobs, I'd say, within our industry where you get to do, kind of all of those aspects, if that makes sense.
No, definitely, you need to be comfortable with numbers, and this can also be taught during, your training period, like, how to interpret numbers that you see from your sources. But I guess it comes like a little naturally to me because growing up, my favorite subject was mathematics. So that was, I just happened to be good at writing, so I ended up going in a literature degree because it was easy for me. But the only subject I remember, like, laboring over and really enjoying it was maths. Yeah, you need to be comfortable with numbers, but that is also one thing. If you are a business journalist, you need to know how to interpret numbers. You need to know how to look at like a company's earnings and find stories in those numbers. That's a part of being a business journalist. And especially in a PRA, we are not just like writing about how a company is doing. We are actively, like, participating in, hey, I heard this is the deal that went through. Like, do you think this is like reflective of the market overall, or do you think it's an outlier? Those kind of conversations. It's overall a very interesting job, I would say. And yeah, to be good at being a price reporter, definitely you need both aspects, like, being comfortable in, like, writing stories in a creative way. Not that, we do have to follow some, like, set standards as well, set templates as well, but yeah, we can also be okay with, like, you know harvesting numbers and then interpreting them and then, like, publishing a final price.
Yes. And for those who are listening and or watching, if you're in the metals industry and you're on the commercial side of things, price reporting agencies, especially the reporters, are excellent people to know because they are the people that, like Rijuta said, they're not biased in the marketplace. So I used to, and still do, have great relationships with reporters where if I hear something that I am not able to confirm directly through the source, it's wonderful to be able to go to these reporters and say, hey, so I heard a thing,
Oh,
and
yes.
be able to go to them and say, hey, I heard these things in the marketplace. Are you hearing these things? And they're wonderful because they can essentially go out there and they're not going to tell you, oh, I heard from such and such. Like they can't do that, right? But they can more or less, be great sources of information. They can confirm, deny. They can basically, like, through their information channels, be great resources as well, because they're probably some of the most well-connected individuals, if you think about it, because you're probably talking to, I don't even want to put a number on it, so many individuals
Yeah.
within the market because you have so many different consumers, suppliers, the service centers, pretty much anyone that's touching the steel that you're reporting on. You need to make sure that you're talking to them on a regular basis. So think about all those individuals that she and her team are speaking to on a regular basis. So reporters are fantastic to know. I mean, they're awesome personally, but also on a professional basis. Think about it. They're excellent to know.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say this out on a limb. Come talk to us. You always are going to remain anonymous,
Yes.
and you will benefit because we are talking to many people. So I know that some people, when they first, like, I approach them and I say, "Hey, I'm a reporter," they're a little taken aback. That, oh no, I'm like, no, but hey, listen, it's all anonymous. You can speak to me if you're comfortable. You can say as much as you want. And I have seen those relationships deepen with time as you build trust between each other. The quality of your conversation changes. They begin telling you more and more things, and then because they also find value in talking to the reporters, right? So it's, yeah, there's a lot of interpersonal relationships at play at being a good reporter for
Yes.
this industry, for sure. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and it absolutely goes both ways. I've gotten phone calls before from reporters, and it's been an ask of, hey, I've heard these things. Have you heard that? And I've been able to say, oh, absolutely. And here's the information. Or I haven't, which has been a great tip. And then let me go confirm it with a few people. And then I've been able to basically report back. It's been a great exchange of information over the course of years. And I love that because as a former trader, I think of it as information is what moves prices in my mind, right? The news is what moves prices. Essentially, when you're talking about Ukraine, for instance, Ukraine was a major news event, right? It's still ongoing, obviously. And that affected prices. Without that major news story, the prices would not have moved as greatly as they did, right? So information is what we trade, essentially. So without individuals like yourself, without Fastmarkets, without the price reporting agencies reporting on these news stories, the prices aren't necessarily going to move. So we need individuals like yourselves putting that information out there.
Definitely. And also, I have seen some like major steel industry news being reported by the general media where they make basic mistakes. And I don't blame those journalists because they just do not know the industry as well as we do. And like whatever news is coming out in the general media, for example, yesterday's news with, President Biden, rumored to be, blocking the big acquisition deal of US Steel by Nippon Steel. Um, we just know like the entire backstory, and we just know things way better than a general reporter could, because they report on everything, right? And we report on only this. So, therefore our stories are also like, essentially different. And yeah, it's just been a very busy week. We thought we were going to have a chill long Labor Day weekend, and no, 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 that's not going to happen.
No, not so much. And yes, spoiler alert if you're listening to this now, and obviously we record these, edit them, and then put them out later. But Rijuta is very graciously still maintaining this appointment and recording this during a very hectic time frame in her schedule, because again, this should have been a relatively calm time.
Should have been. Yeah. Yeah.
And it is anything but. So it's been very interesting on that front. And it's very, very true what you said. It's been fascinating to see the mainstream media reporting on something very specific to our industry, and then seeing, especially on LinkedIn, a lot of your coworkers putting up the, industry reporter takes on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And seeing some of the industry participant takes on it. And yes, I mean, we're in it a little bit more. So we have some more nuance on it. We've also been in it for over a year at this point, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We have a bit more of the tea backstory on it.
Yeah. You have the tea. Come talk to me.
A little bit more about this point. So honestly, I wasn't expecting it to be this early, since they had announced that it wasn't going to be, closed until the end of the year. But obviously they're trying to get it out before election. But okay, sidebarring on that.
Yeah, no, I think also the fact that it's an election year,
Yes.
There are so many intangible impacts of that. So many. It doesn't like, it's just a sentiment thing, and people who follow markets will know how much sentiment moves market. Yeah,
Yes.
Any market. It's amazing. It's basically like the human mind and heart physically moving how business is getting done in the country. I find it fascinating. And yeah, we are in a very contentious election year. So let's see how that pans out. We'll be busy. The reporters will be busy. Yeah. All
Yes.
year.
Yes.
Yeah.
There will be a lot to report on.
Yeah.
Very much. And speaking of busy, your travel and my travel will also be busy this season. And we will, again, spoiler alert, probably post this event, but we will be seeing each other at the Women in Steel conference in Pittsburgh coming up in a couple weeks. Have you attended that event before?
No, it'll be my first time.
Okay.
It'll be my first time, yeah. And I think this year I've made a concerted effort at at reaching out and putting myself out there at these specific kind of work events, because like Jennifer, I think you're doing an amazing job at what you're doing. You're making metals news cool and accessible, and it's really cool. I think it's really cool, and that's why I reached out to you and asked if I could be on your podcast. But yeah, that was also one of the reasons why I reached out to you, because I do have an agenda for this year that I do want to talk about the work that I do, and my standing as a female reporter, all that. So yeah.
Yes.
It plays right in there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you report on green steel as well. And that's a topic as well that we'll get to at another podcast date in the future. And it's interesting because this industry is growing. the Women in Steel conference that we're going to in a couple weeks is growing as well. It looks like it's probably going to double in size from the last the previous year's attendance, and the demographics of the industry are changing because of some of the, I'd say, digital marketing efforts of some companies that are out there that are looking at essentially the competition of other industries that are out there in terms of the talent, right? I think we've always been cool personally. What we do is fantastic in our industry. We just haven't shown people what we do.
Yeah.
So,
Cool nerds.
right? When we're getting ahead on the next podcast episode with you, but essentially, our industry has one of the greatest opportunities to make the biggest impact on carbon emissions with some of the sustainability technology that's available out there, mainly because we have some of the highest carbon emissions out there in terms of how we manufacture some of the metals. But that also should be known to the next generation, that the opportunities exist here to make the greatest change. And how can you do that if you aren't making it known to 100% of the workforce that's out there?
I agree. Like, I do not think many people realize that how important the topic of decarbonization has become in our industry in, I would say, just the last 2-3 years. Like, I wouldn't remember this happening even 5 years ago. The kind of intense focus and conversation and actual efforts being put into it, you know. So we'll discuss that in our next podcast. But I don't feel like, like it's just for show. It's just for, like, saying those things and for, like, earning brownie points. I don't think so. I don't think so. It's quite remarkable to see the huge shift in the last few years.
Agreed. Absolutely. Before we head off, I want to be able to give you an opportunity because, again, I want to be respectful of your time and what's happening currently in the marketplace. Is there anything topic-wise we haven't covered, or are there any pieces of advice that you would give to somebody that's looking to get into the metals industry?
I can speak from my standing in the industry, which is as an observer, while also being a participant in that way that I'm observing the industry and reporting on it. I have found the metals industry to be very welcoming, very generally very friendly to someone who does not sound like them. You know, I am Indian. I sound Indian. And they are very respectful of me because they see the value in my work. They see the value in what I can I can help with. So overall, I'm very proud to be doing the job that I do. And when people ask me how is it, like, being a woman, like, and you're an immigrant, how is it for you? And I tell them I think it's very welcoming. It's very welcoming. It's very it's getting more diverse. I have one more reporter in my team who is from Asia like me. She's from Singapore, and she's also, like, making really great strides in the industry. So in just my career with Fastmarkets, I'm seeing that happening. Um, I would like other people to know, that it's not. It is, of course, it is still a male dominated industry, and there's, like, a certain demographic, which is very visible. But I think that there's real space for inclusion and growth, and yeah, I feel optimistic about the path of this industry, and, like, more female voices, more diverse voices, and people with actual power to make a change. because I think it helps with my reporting that I come from a different country and that I have an outsider's perspective. I am quite neutral in my judgment about things that are happening here. Overall, yeah, I'm very happy I have the job that I do.
It's been wonderful to see you at the event. It was great to see you in Houston last year, as well as most likely Houston again in January, I believe, coming up.
I think so. Yeah, I
I
think
believe
so.
so for 2025 for the
Yeah.
Fastmarkets Scrap and Steel Conference again. And what you're doing in the industry is wonderful. And it's a unique job that most people are not aware of. And it's fantastic that you're putting a spotlight on it. If people want to get a hold of you, is the best way to find you on LinkedIn?
I think so because LinkedIn is where I have made a lot of my sources as well. They just need to look up my name, Rijuta Dey, in Fastmarkets, and if there's something you want to talk to me about, and it's pertinent to my work, I will definitely love to hear from people in the industry. Yeah.
Wonderful. Because again, reporters are wonderful sources of information. They're great to talk to, and they're great confidential individuals. So
All confidential, all anonymous. Don't be scared.
yes, don't be scared. They're unbiased, wonderful people. So do not be afraid to talk to them. Rijuta, I just want to say thank you for taking the time again during this very hectic time, very interesting time. It's going to be wonderful to see you in person in a couple weeks at the Women in Steel conference. For those that are listening, this is Rijuta Dey. She is the senior reporter at Fastmarkets, specializing in the steel area. We're going to talk to her, spoiler alert, at a future date on a different podcast. And I'm looking forward to that conversation. For today, I want to say thank you for sharing your background, your career, how you got in here, and what you're working on at Fastmarkets. Really, truly appreciate the time. Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you so much.